Getting started in video production does not take a huge investment in equipment. It takes a proper investment in equipment, and you probably have the best piece in your pocket right now. So you probably found this video while Googling what's the best camera, what's the best microphones, lighting, etc. to get started in making my own productions. Great, that means that you're ready and engaged and you want to figure out what's the best to use, not necessarily what's the most expensive. So what I'm going to do in this video is go over the 4 main categories and then examples from each one of them on the same screen with information so you can make an educated decision. That is your camera, your lights, your sound, and your stabilization. What I'm going to do in each one of these shots is split up into different cameras, have a little menu that comes up to show what the resolution is, if there's any color correction or filters or anything specific about it, and I'll make sure to put all the links I possibly can in the description below. Obviously, cameras are first. That's the most important piece of equipment that you can have because it's video. So what I'm going to do is split this up into 5 or 6 different shots right now. Let's go ahead and split everything out, and I'll move out of the way so you can see the menu come up. And in no particular order, I'm going to go down the list. First, this is a Galaxy Note 3 from like 2013. It was the first phone, camera, anything I ever had that had 4K built into it. This thing's 6 years old, cracked screen, junk drawer, reset to its factory settings, but it shoots in 4K, and I mean, I've got it laying around. Beside it is an iPhone like 4 or 5 shooting in 1080. Now, obviously we're on like iPhone 11 by now, and the cameras in your cell phone that you have in your pocket are amazing compared to these 6-year-old monsters. I mean, this feels like black and white days. The most important thing when you use your phone as your camera, this is a phone, this is a camera. This is a phone, this is a camera. We never shoot in portrait mode when we're shooting video. Still photos, family things, that's neat because nobody's going to look at your footage when it's shot like this. Make sure it's in landscape mode. It's a pet peeve, I swear. Moving on from there, if you want something that's like a camera, you can step up to a GoPro. So this is a GoPro 5 Black. I have it shooting in 4K right now just to kind of show what it can do, what it looks like, blah, blah, blah. It's not in wide mode just because of the fisheye. I wanted it to match up to the other lenses, but I paid $150 for this thing maybe 2 weeks ago. Right now we're on GoPro 8 for whatever it cost, but it's amazing that 2 years later I'll buy whatever the coolest GoPro was 2 years ago, now 2 years later, for $150 to $200 with tons of accessories because everybody wants whatever the new thing is. I have 3 of these things. It's amazing to be able to shoot stuff in 4K and still frames and time-lapse, whatever. Moving on. This is my workhorse. This is the Canon 5D Mark III. I've had it since like 2013. Maybe 20,000 hours on it, and I don't know how many shutter clicks. It's fallen off my motorcycle. I've taken it, trips everywhere. It's very unassuming, and what's cool is it's broadcast quality, 1080, 30 frames a second. So you don't really need 4K when you have amazing glass and a full frame sensor. Now the anomaly in the group is this guy. This is a Sony Z5U. I got this for under $500 on eBay. Originally, it was somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000 as a prosumer camera. 1080, 60 frames a second, triple chip, so it's got 3 CMOS in it, one for red, green, and blue. The reason that it's the anomaly is I can get a $5,000 camera for under $500 right now, only because it runs on tape, and nobody wants to work in a tape-based medium anymore. But I can hook up a Phantom 48 microphone. It's ridiculous. I use it as my main studio camera whenever I'm doing classes, because here in my studio I have 6 cameras rolling around, so I can teach video production live, just in case you don't want to sit here and watch the YouTube channel. And I just realized that my voice is going out. I apologize. My baby got me sick and I'm sucking these down. I guess I shouldn't show what the logo is. So that's why I'm going to sound a little hoarse right now, but we're going to get through it because the next section is audio. Before I can move on to microphones, I forgot to cover two cameras. The reason I couldn't cover them is because I was unable to set them up for a demonstration. Two popular alternatives to the ones that I just listed are the traditional point and shoot, because the newest versions of these point and shoot cameras are shooting in 1080 all the way up to 4K. Their benefits are, you know, $100, $200, $300, just like a personal camcorder. They're pocket-sized, very unassuming, but because of a 4K sensor, people are able to use them just as well as a smartphone. They'll have an actual optical zoom on them, and I mean, this is so small to get professional, prosumer quality video. The other option is, which is falling apart on me, is mirrorless. A mirrorless is just like the Canon DSLR, except there's no mirror. In a mirrorless one, you only have a giant screen on the back where your video goes through. But what's cool is it still allows for lenses to be changed out, to have that beautiful shallow depth of field, to have awesome glass just like the Canon. The only issue is you just don't have a viewfinder. You can get them in micro four thirds, some CMOS, and even full frame sensors. Moving on to audio, because video without audio is surveillance. You've got to be able to hear it. Number one, we never use the onboard microphone. You can hear my voice right now out of the Sony's onboard microphone, and you know, it's not as helpful, it's not as good, it's whatever. Let's start off with a normal cardioid. A normal cardioid microphone is what they use on a lapel mic. This is called a lapel mic because it mounts on a lapel. Its technical term is a lavalier microphone. Now you can have these hardwired to a camera, but if you want something useful, you get a wireless pack. Now if you want true wireless, meaning a wireless sender and a wireless receiver, you're looking to spend $500 on a high quality kit. I saved a little money by having a wireless belt pack and having a hardwired rack-mounted receiver. Spent about $250 online to get that. Do not buy cheap options that are in the $100 range, because you'll only get about 20 feet away before you get static, and these things are useless. Don't even waste your money on it. Now, this is a cardioid pickup pattern, so it's very wide. It's not as focused as the Hyper or Super that we're going to talk about here in a second. The range, the more you spend, the more range you get. I can get 1,500 feet away from the receiver line of sight with this and shoot. Now, the issue comes that it's a single source. I can't shoot into an interview. I can't shoot into a group of people. I have to have one of these for every person that's talking. And if it's more than two, I've got to have a mixer. Now, the alternative for that is the Hyper Cardioid. Now, this is a short shotgun mic. This is my Rode video mic that I originally started with. It's wonderful, about a 5, 6, 7 foot pickup pattern. It's awesome. If you get too far away and you have to gain it up, you'll end up picking up too much background noise. But if you're getting a small group of people, run and gun type interviews, this is my favorite piece. I used it for years at $100 plus the cost of a dead cat windscreen. You'll do pretty much everything, and they have 1/8 inch inputs that'll go into most phones or modern phones with an adapter. Now, I got this guy at the flea market for $5. I didn't hook it up to test it right now because I'm just sticking with one camera. It's okay. It's got maybe a 2 or 3 foot pattern, but it still sounds better than the onboard microphone. So we've gone from cardioid to hypercardioid. Then we have what's called a supercardioid. That's what I'm actually talking into right now. That's just out of frame. This guy is the other channel, so you can hear me go left channel, right channel, left channel, right channel. Yeah, I'm being stupid. But this has a very focused pickup pattern. They're used at football games. They're used in television studios where a actual boom operator is operating the microphone to focus at certain people. You'll see that person holding the big boom and keeping it going. He's wearing headphones. I use static to point into me so I don't have to wear the lapel mic and be unsightly. They are expensive. These things are from the late 80s and they were probably $2,000 back then. I paid 150 bucks on Craigslist for them. The issue is you have to have Phantom 48 or P48 power, meaning they either have to have a battery, weird expensive one added to it, or you have to get something else to power it. The one main microphone, there's obviously other types of microphones. The main one that I'm not talking about in this segment is the omnidirectional microphone. I use this one for voiceovers. This is a Snowball Blue. I think they're retail $100. I paid $30 for this used. USB input. I use it in a pop filter and some sound deadening if I'm doing the actual voiceovers for videos. With all that being said, which I know is my favorite quote, we've had the onboard. This is the sound of the onboard. We have the cardioid or normal kind of condenser, big mushroom look over it. That's good for one person. We have the hypercardioid, which is the shotgun. Right now I'm about 5 feet away from the microphone that's on top of the Canon camera. We have the supercardioid, which is the shotgun mic that you see in places, and then the omnidirectional all the way. My favorite, Rode Video Mic or the Rode Video Mic Pro, or the Sennheiser has a little short one for about $200. That's audio because, hey, we have audio. Next, we're moving on to lighting. Now, the lighting setup that I'm using right now is an LED bank system. There are 3 lights right now. I have a key, a fill, and a hair light or a backlight, which you've seen in some of the shots throughout this video from the wide angle views of a camera. Now, these are LED lights in daylight temperature. I have them set at around 5,600 degrees. Those degrees are on the Kelvin scale, and it's like how hot something is. Red being cooler, blue being the hottest. Your incandescent bulbs, like your in-table lamps, are normally in the 2,700 to 3,300, which is warm white to cool white temperature. Fluorescence around 4,000 degrees. Pure white to daylight is around 5,000 to 5,600, and then like cloudy days are 7. But these cameras are being auto white balanced to these lights. And so I'm using diffusion. This is actually diffusion fabric, and you can see that right there gives me just a little bit of underglow here. I'll turn it up so you can see, and then I'll turn it down. And all it does is it's meant to kind of fill in the shadows a little bit. Your key light at 100, your fill at maybe 75%, and your hair light maybe around 50, just to give some definition and give the background a little bit of light. I'm gonna have to stop the video right now so that the auto white balance is going to adjust for the next lights that I'm gonna show you. Magic. Can I put in like a fake light pull right here? And click, click. So this is the second lighting setup. This is the one I use about 60% of the time. This is my favorite one to recommend to people just getting into video production, mostly because it's the cheapest option out there. It's incandescent lights. It is all just about 12 lights in a string. It's not these bulbs. They are the free LED bulbs. What's awesome is if you buy 20 of them at a time, they'll all come at the exact same color temperature. These are my favorite. I've got some at 2,700 that are just a little bit too yellow. These that are up now are around 3,300, so a little closer to daylight. To get diffusion out of it, I've wrapped them all with Chinese lanterns. Now for the key light, the reason I have such a hard shadow on my chest is I'm using the LED lights that came with it in a normal in-table lamp with some diffusion cones on it. But this is using house lights, incandescent bulbs. I think I might have $40 in this entire setup right now. Next one is going to be Lull Toda lights. Click, click. Okay, this is a Lull Toda. These are very similar to those shop lights bulbs that you would get from, you know, your local tool store, your local home improvement store. Very bright, very hot. I've got 2 of them in here right now, 750 watts each, so there's no dimmer to it. They just have these metal scrim to keep things from attaching to it because they are so insanely hot. I'm glad I'm shooting this in January because running these things all day in here would be just ridiculous. They have that incandescent color. 3200 Kelvin is what we're at, and it's drawing 6 amps of power. So if I had 3 of these, I'd have to have a professional circuit going because that's almost 20 amps. A 15 amp house circuit would blow as soon as you turn the 3rd one on. And you can see I have my key shadow, a little fill shadow, and I don't have as much hair light. I know I don't have as much hair. I meant to say hair light, as the other shot. Now, I can't mix the lights together because it'll look weird. It's more of a bluish light to it. On these Lowell Tota lights, I'm actually using the same kind of diffusion cloth so that it's not a hard light, and they're pointed up to the ceiling to give me some bounce. I like them because you can get just a ridiculous amount of power out of a $150 used piece of equipment, but they're incredibly hot. Honestly, I use these once every 2 or 3 years, and it's mostly if I'm doing an outdoor scene and I need to compensate for a hot sun. I'll use these as a fill and a hair light. I'm actually I don't know what my scrims are rated for temperature-wise, so I'm going to hurry up, finish this scene, and move on to wrapping things up. So click, click. We're back to normal. The next thing we're going to talk about is stabilization, because you don't ever want to watch videos that are just crazy shaky like somebody's holding them in their hand. We're going to talk about everything from a little cheap tripod and the Joby all the way to the big Manfrottos and bullheads and all those sort of things. So I need to reset and figure out how to shoot that because the cameras are all on a tripod right now, and I'll be right back. Click, click. All right, so the next category is stabilization. Handheld shots have their place, mostly in documentary style or what's called run and gun shooting. But if you want to keep a more professional look for your daily applications, keep it on a tripod. Now, you don't have to spend big bucks on a studio heavy-duty tripod like my Manfrotto one here. If you're shooting with a smartphone, you can get started with something as simple as $5 off of Amazon for a little cheap option like this. Or the one that I use while I'm traveling is something like this, set it on top of a book. It's big enough to hold my DSLR, and it's a great little handheld pocket tripod. Now, if you do go to something professional like the Manfrotto, the reason you will spend more money is for a lighter one if you're carrying it, or for fluid head for better smooth pan and tilt actions. Some of them get higher, some of them are easier to take up and down, some are easier to level with a bowl head on it. And by sticking with a brand like Manfrotto, you can interchange with the other option, which is a monopod. Now, a monopod, just like the tripod, what's great about the Manfrotto one is it can stand up on its own, and as soon as I take my camera off of the tripod, slide it right on to the monopod, and boom, I'm ready to go. Fluid head and super tall. I can get up to 7 feet to get over the heads of people in audiences, at concerts, and things like that. If you don't want to spend the high dollars on Manfrotto pieces like this, and you're just working with your smartphone, for about $15, you can get like a walking stick monopod. Has a 1/4-20 mount on the top, perfect enough to hold your smartphone, clips on while you're traveling. This thing weighs maybe 3-4 pounds with the camera attached to it, and I'm able to get steady shots. In the same spirit of the monopod is my DIY option that I built for the GoPro. What's cool about it is just a painter's pole with a block attached to the top of it and GoPro mounts, and it gives me some of those dynamic over-the-head crowd runaround shots. Now, you could buy these for, I don't know, $15, $20, $30 from GoPro, or spend a day and $5 to make your own just like this. Now, I'm not going to talk about cranes, dollies, jibs, those more professional options. The one thing past a tripod and monopod that I do want to talk about is a slider. Now, you can mount these to your tripod. It gives me just a slightly more dynamic shot, whether it's an item reveal or you're wanting to just give a different aspect of a look. A slider is a good $100, $200 option to give even more dynamic of a shot. One piece that I forgot to mention is something like this Joby Gorilla. Now, there are replicas out there, but the Joby Gorilla Pod is the original version. You can get something small like this, or this one that I'm using to hold my light is actually strong enough for the DSLR. And what's great is I love that I can hold it and do handheld shots and then wrap it around other objects that I find to hold the camera up where it needs to be held. Most important, get you a simple tripod to get started, something in the $15 range, then upgrade as needed to maybe a $200 Manfrotto lightweight, either carbon or aluminum with a fluid head. And don't upgrade to anything this big until you're more into a studio application or you're needing to hold a lot heavier cameras. Get you a slider in that 1 to 150 range to get some dynamic reveal shots, some good product photography. Get something like a flexible Gorilla Pod, you know, just to have some more dynamic mounting options. And then for quick run and gun shooting, get you something like this monopod for $15 at Best Buy. So the next video in this series is going to be about production techniques. We're going to take all the things that we learned in these last 4 segments from audio, lighting, video, and stabilization, and we're actually going to put it into practice. So we'll see you then.